Right. Welcome everybody back after today. Only two more sessions in this book, and we will be done with Thursday morning theology for the calendar year 2025. This week we're looking at the prophets. There's prophets there starting on page 99. And to be fair, I read this last Friday. I think I remember, right?
I'm sure you do.
But the sentence is from Micah 6:8. It is one that's one that should be familiar to us all.
It was the theme of one of the retreats.
Okay, all right. What does the Lord?
Well, he answered.
He answered. What does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God? And starting there, he just goes through, is that all? I mean, you think about the law and all the laws, and yes. Exodus, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy are indeed rather thick books. More than 600 specific laws. And then you boil it down to justice, kindness, and that word can be translated mercy or faithfulness, which it just differs in the translations. And humility. And it was Micah who got the word from God himself. He has shown you, O mortal or O man. Right? So if you look over at the top of 100, this isn't the first time we've got such a radical summarizing, right? Deuteronomy presents Moses doing the same thing. He gets it down to 5. What does the Lord your God ask of you but to fear the Lord, walk in obedience to him, to love him, to serve the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and to observe the Lord's commands and decrees. All right. Fear, walk, love, serve, observe. That's it. And then Jesus gets it down to 2 by taking Deuteronomy 6:5 and Leviticus 19:18 and putting them together, saying, love the Lord your God and love your neighbor as yourself. The 10 words, or what we call the 10 commandments of the Decalogue, it's there. Love God, love your neighbor as yourself. Right? The Old Testament's awfully big for it to be summarized down into that. That's indeed what Jesus has done, and here in Micah, God himself has done. And I love the next to last, the last full paragraph on page 100. About 4 lines down, there's italicized words here. It's a matter of fundamental commitment to God himself. It's expressed through love and humble submission and vertical relationship and acting with justice and compassion in human affairs horizontally. So that's the essence of the covenant relationship between God and Israel, and it is the job of the prophets, and yes, a thankless job most of the time. Anyone that's read prophets knows that they were always in trouble. Always in trouble. The last of the Old Testament prophets was John the Baptist, and we know what happened to him. Always in trouble. So we talk about who, at the top of the next page in 101, who were they? What was their job? When did they live? And does our choice of sentence represent a fair summary of their message? And I'm not going to take the time to go through this, but Carol, you want to just anything there, starting with speaking for God, which is what prophets do. We talked a little bit about this last night with Habakkuk.
It's all good, but I didn't highlight anything until the second paragraph down.
Okay.
The second sentence, there are 3 large books, Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel, and then the so-called book of the 12. Those 12 are sometimes referred to as minor prophets, the ones from Hosea to Malachi. The word minor only means that their books are short, not that they themselves are minor or unimportant in the work they did for God in their own day. Some of them are very significant indeed.
Right. Yeah, we just do that to distinguish them. It's not a Jewish designation. That's more of a Christian designation of them. There's nothing minor about what's in any of these prophets. But if you want to go back up just a little bit to the paragraph before that, we do have Moses, who's a prophet. We have Miriam. We have Samuel, Nathan, Elijah, Elisha, and many others. And they don't have books. And some of them, bless our hearts, are women. Miriam and Deborah, and we were reading about Huldah, the prophetess, I believe, Carol. We were reading from her after Josiah finds the book of the law in the temple. But yeah, so there were prophets that we didn't get any written communications from, right? But there are, again, 15 books in our Bibles. And then, yeah, Daniel is not considered, because he's right there. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, Daniel. Well, wait a minute, Daniel is thought of more as a writing because he's lumped in with the writings because there's more than prophecy there. There's narrative and other things like that. So, okay. So yeah, that last paragraph on page 101, first sentence, prophets are men and women who speak out for God. They usually say, this is what the Lord says, or thus saith the Lord, that. So they're speaking for God to the people. Today, at the top of the next page, we use it to refer to people who foretell the future. Mostly, not always, but mostly. Don't ask me to predict what is going to happen. But the biblical prophets do not spend all their time predicting the future. Basically, what they do is they speak God's word directly to the people around them, their own generation. So they're trying to exact change in their day, most of the time. They're trying to get people to change right there, boots on the ground, right there, right then. There is foretelling, of course, in the prophets, but the majority of their job is to get the people to listen to them. So I think that's one of the things that we have to think about.
I liked this sentence. Well, sometimes, of course, they do speak about the future, whether it's a warning or an encouragement. But when they do that, it is usually in order to make people think and act differently in the present.
Yeah, right. In other words, repent and change, or have faith in God and obey, right? Yeah. And so, yeah, there's a little bit of both of that. It depends on which prophet you're reading too. All right? But we got to get the message. How do they get the message across? Weird ways, a lot of the time. Weird ways. Persuasive tactics, right? They use sarcasm and mockery. They do. Sometimes people need to be shocked into paying attention. All right. But the ultimate thing here is that they're trying to persuade the people, right? Come back to God. Amend your ways. But sometimes you gotta. Now, I don't think you should do it every Sunday, or if because the preacher does inhabit an element of proclamation or prophetic thing, but it's not every Sunday that the congregation needs to be yelled into coming back to God, coming back to God. After a while, it just kind of, there he goes again, or there she goes again, But you have to vary your style. You have to vary your tactics. But you want to be persuasive, right? And so that's one of the things that they do. Because what you want the prophet can say, I warned them, right? They can't say, well, we didn't know. We didn't know. Yeah, you've read the prophets. Believe me, they know, and we know today, right? So that's the first one. The second one is poetic vividness. There's a lot of poetry. This is where, like Leviticus, and for different reasons, where the last half of Exodus and Leviticus and Deuteronomy, the poetry, it's just chapter after chapter after chapter of poetic vividness. Just over and over. You can't read Revelation without understanding you're reading a lot of poetry in Revelation, prophetic poetry. Anybody here like to read poetry? I do. Thank you, Lynette. Yeah. You do?
I like poetry.
You have a favorite poet you like to read? Mine's Robert Frost.
Yes.
Yeah, I would
For
probably say
for
that
a
as
man
well.
born north of the Manson-Nixon line, he's not bad, you know? Yeah, I like Robert Frost myself. Yeah, Linnell, you have a favorite poet?
I like Frost, but Robert Louis Stevenson.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I've got a book of poetry like this. Every once in a while, I sit down
Yeah.
and read
Yeah.
different poets.
Yeah, you gotta be invested in that. You gotta, you know, it's not everybody's cup of tea, you know, it's just
No.
because it's, yeah, I mean, I'll read Frost and what, you know, but a lot of his stuff is very easy just to catch on to. But, yeah, I really enjoy Robert Frost. But yeah,
I would say John doesn't read poetry. I think everybody can understand that.
yeah. Instruction manuals, he's your man.
Oh, he's
He'll read those all day long. There you go.
all the time.
John, we miss you. That's why we're talking about you. Okay. Nothing. Yeah, but yeah, instruction manuals, that's your guy right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you know, just, you know, some folks can't read fiction. That's a shame. There's such good stuff in fiction. Now there's, you know, but some folks like Huxford, you know, my friend and mentor, he loves reading biographies of presidents, and he's on a mission to read all of them.
Mm.
You know, I mean, he can talk about any of the presidents. I mean, just wow.
You ever heard of John Greenleaf Whittier?
I have, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I have, yeah.
We had to memorize one of his poems when I was in seventh grade.
Okay. Yeah, oh yeah, love that stuff right there. I even like me a little bit of Shakespeare.
Mm.
I've read some. I cannot say that I have read all, but I have read some. I haven't read all of a work. Let's just put it that way. It's just tough. But it's beautiful, but it's tough. Yeah. But yeah, okay. So, a little exercise here. I don't know. Did anybody do the whole bottom of 103? Yeah. Take a look at Jeremiah 2. He says, it's full of poetic imagery and rhetorical questions. It swings wildly from one picture to another. That's part of the frustration people have with poetry. You'll be talking about something for 3 or 4 lines, and then, whoop, we're not there anymore. We're talking about this. This is what Jeremiah does, right? And he gives you some of the, he gives you a big chunk, right?
Yeah, he does.
Mhm. So,
Two pages, actually.
yes. So, he was speaking poetic oracles beautifully. I remember the devotion of your youth, God speaking, boy, this is how as a bride you loved me and followed me. But you know what he's talking about, and followed me through the wilderness, through a land not sown. Israel was holy to the Lord, the first fruits of his harvest. All who devoured her were held guilty, and disaster overtook them, declares the Lord. Oh, but it doesn't end well. Therefore I bring charges against you again, declares the Lord, and I will bring charges against your children's children. Cross over to the coast of Cyprus and look, send to Kedar and observe closely, see if there has ever been anything like this. Has a nation ever changed its gods? Yet they are not God at all, but my people have exchanged their glorious God for worthless idols. And just on and on and on. This is poetry. Okay, this is beautiful poetry. All right, so poetry. The next is picture language. I love that. The prophets loved pictures as much as Jesus loved parables. Amen.
Yeah.
All right, amen. They really did. And they drew comparisons everything. You know, just looking at the top of 106, you can see there, that first full paragraph, Jeremiah uses at least a dozen different word pictures to make his points there in Jeremiah 2. You know, of a bride, first fruits, a spring and a cistern, lions, a vine, soap, camels and donkeys, and I mean just so on and so on. He just leaps from one picture to another, engaging the imagination and making his message memorable, because they couldn't go pick up his latest set of oracles, you know, or they weren't going to be delivered to them in the mail. You know, they had to remember these things.
Mhm.
You know, so they had that. And then my favorite, words in action. Like Isaiah going around naked in Jerusalem. Can you see it? Can you see it? Isaiah, hey, who's that? Oh, that's Isaiah. Put some clothes up. No. He's
Making a point.
making a point. I don't know what point he's making, but he's making a point.
Or if they got the point he was making.
Got people's attention.
He did.
That's a good point.
Yeah, Isaiah 20, he walks around naked. God told him to portray the shame of captivity that lies ahead. Jeremiah 13, he buys and wears a new linen sash, then buries it until it's rotten and useless to show what Israel has become like in God's sight. And then Jeremiah puts on an ox yoke, he puts it on his shoulders, and bursts into an international diplomatic conference in that's what it was, in Jerusalem, to tell the ambassadors of other nations to submit to the yoke of Nebuchadnezzar, because God has raised him up for the moment. All right, and then of course Ezekiel, lying on his side, besieging a model of Jerusalem on a large clay brick to show the first exiles in Babylon that the city will soon be captured and destroyed. That's just a sample of the actions that God called the prophets to do. Is it safe to say that the prophets were probably weird? Not all of them now, but the ones we know about, they were weird.
Yeah.
Maybe not Moses, okay? Maybe not his sister Miriam, but maybe not Samuel. But these guys later during the exilic period, they're pretty weird, I have to admit. But who were they? And then I appreciate the background he gives us here. This is very, very helpful in grouping them in the 9th century. Now we're BC. So the 9th century BC is the 800s, okay? The 800s BC. And that's when Elijah and Elisha are roaming around. And we know their story. You can read about it in 1st and 2nd Kings. Elijah and Elisha, thunderous prophets. Anything here that caught anybody's eye?
He does say it's a confusing period.
Yeah. Yeah, after Solomon, things immediately, well, actually, during Solomon's reign, everything starts to go downhill. And it was the very next generation, Rehoboam and Jeroboam, where the kingdom was ripped. And it was another prophet, not named here, but it was another prophet who walked up to Rehoboam. Or was it Jeroboam? It was Jeroboam. He walked up to Jeroboam and said, here, he cuts his robe into 12 pieces and says, here, take 10. You know, and what? You know, so because God's about to rip the kingdom away from the house of David. But because of David, I'm only going to rip 10 of the tribes. I will leave him a witness. He calls it a lamp in Jerusalem. So, and I believe that probably was Ahijah who did that. All right, so Ahijah's not on our list, but that's another one of those weird, you know, here, take 10, you know, what are you doing? You know, but and of course, that does indeed happen when the northern tribes crown Jeroboam as king, and Jeroboam is the one you don't want to be like. You know, Elijah calls out Ahab, and says he's guilty of the sins of Jeroboam, because Jeroboam was worried that those who were faithful to him in the northern kingdom would eventually start feeling the pull back toward Jerusalem, toward the temple. So he set up the calves at Bethel and Dan, and that began the northern kingdoms. Yeah. So this a little bit later is when Elijah and Elisha are, and even their story is just so very weird. Confronting the kings. Elisha, we're going to hear from him in the sermon this Sunday. He's working miracles for a Syrian war man. So those are the 9th century. Now the 8th century are ones that we're a bit more, because I think what happens in our Bibles is we tend to look at, okay, well, Isaiah came first and Jeremiah came second, but that's not true. And I think it's just because they're in the order that they're in, But Amos and Hosea were prophesying in the north, and at the same time, Isaiah and Micah are prophesying in the south. And everything's going along pretty good, right? But it won't be that way for very long. These prophets are seeing a very different picture underneath. Society is rotten. People are suffering, and God is angry. And that leads us to Amos, okay? And he he begins by condemning all the surrounding foreign nations. This is a good tactic. They're bad, they're bad, they're bad, they're bad, they're bad, they're bad. You're getting amens from the congregation. They're bad, they're bad, they're bad, they're bad, they're bad. But you, that's what are worse. Right? He says he fiercely denounces the social injustices that he sees in the midst of the wealth of some. He defends the exploited poor and calls them the righteous. What he means is those with right on their side. They're not right just because they're poor. They're right because they're being taken advantage of. They're being left out. Let's see what we got here. This was he calls the wealthy, luxury-loving class, especially in Samaria, he calls them the wicked. It was surprising because people thought then, as many still do now, that to be very rich means you're very blessed by God, no matter how you got your riches. At the same time, Amos claims that the religious rituals that are so popular at the shrines of Bethel and Gilgal are not only not pleasing in the sight of God, but actually stink in God's nostrils. Wow. And then Amos is the first in a long line of prophets to have his words remembered and written down in a book bearing his name. And you have to ask, okay, well then why did they write them down? Probably because they came true. Yeah, you'd want to remember that. You really, really would. All right. I know I'm just covering ground that you have already tilled here. But anything else on Hosea or Isaiah? Because those are the last, or Micah. Don't forget Micah. Anything else catch your eye there in that section? Y'all are like students in a class at school who know that if we don't talk, we get to leave early.
The last full.
Which that is true. That is true. Go ahead.
The last full paragraph on 110, Hosea shows us something of God's character that many people wrongly think is missing in the Old Testament. His loving tenderness, his desire to forgive, and his longing for an intimate relationship with his people.
Yeah.
I thought when it said that many people think that's missing, and that kind of.
Oh, Hosea. Gosh, we talked about him last night. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just wondering, the things that some of these prophets did,
Yeah.
You wonder how many people actually saw it and understood that's what he was doing, like Hosea marrying the prostitute. You know, how many would understand that the prostitute is representative of Jerusalem?
Yeah,
I can understand them standing in the temple and prophesying or preaching and
Yes, sir.
stuff like that, and people hearing it.
yes, sir.
But like Isaiah walking around naked, how many gonna understand that the reason he's walking around naked is representative
No,
of
that's a good
something? I'm
question.
sure he says so
Yeah,
and
right,
tells people, but, I mean,
you can
how
imagine.
many people is he actually reaching?
Yeah, because I would be running, I'd be going in the other
I
direction
was
from
gonna
a,
say,
from
how
a
many
naked
people
man
thought he
walking
was
down the
crazy
street.
and just
I'm going
wanted
the
to
other way.
Just flee,
I mean,
distance,
I
yeah.
mean, you
Yeah.
know,
not be near
baggage.
it's a
him.
good point, yeah. It is interesting. But their words then, once these things happened, and once they came true,
Mhm.
that was when these things started to become written down.
Ponder on it,
Yeah.
a little bit more to understand.
When the prophetic books were being composed. But yeah, it is really strange, especially in the instance of Hosea. But you know how people talk. Can you believe Hosea? You know, so forth and so on. He married and then she cheated on him. What could this mean? And then all of a sudden they hear him speak, and then some of them, a remnant, if you will start going, oh, okay.
He's talking about
that's
us.
what's going on. But not many, because clearly it didn't work. Clearly, by 722, the northern kingdom was no more. So,
It's like you see sidewalk preachers,
yes, sir.
how many people you ever see stop and listen?
And this is true. Yeah, this is true. Yeah.
Hear what they say as you pass by, but you don't really sit and
No, that's
listen to the whole
absolutely right.
sermon.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's right.
Yep, good stuff. All right, let's move on to the 7th century prophets, the 600s. We got this window for the southern kingdom before they are carted off. The Assyrian Empire, of course, has dominated the whole region of what we now call the Middle East. But as empires go, that empire has collapsed and has been replaced by Babylon as the great world power. And this ushered in decades of great turbulence. You have to think of it this way. You've got Egypt here. You got Babylon here. Who's in the middle? Israel. Always being passed through, deals being made between these two kingdoms who are really at war, who are always at war with each other. And here's Israel in the middle, tiny Israel in the middle. My goodness, they were getting it from all sides. I mean, and ultimately they'd get it, as Egypt would, from the north, right? The Babylons would conquer. And that's when the Egyptian empires ended. And God promised that. And it reminds me of the chosen. Jesus meets, not Nathaniel, Thaddeus. When he meets Thaddeus, he says, oh, some of the pyramids will still be around. In other words, it's what it used to be is now nothing, no more. There's some of the pyramids will survive, but the empire is gone. But here's Israel in the middle of all of that game. And they get sent Jeremiah. Jeremiah comes into this real time of nationalistic kind of fervor, and it's built back up. Jeremiah comes in. He's a priest. He comes from a family of priests, and he comes with his words of doom for the southern kingdom. King Jehoiakim, a real friend, burns. Has somebody read it, and after they finish with a page, takes it from them and puts it in the
23
fire.
years worth of, yeah.
And then what's even more interesting is that Jeremiah says, all right, Baruch, get your quill out. We're gonna write it again. And they did it again. And I'm glad. But yeah, he sat there and he burned the whole scroll, 23 years worth of Jeremiah's preaching. But Jeremiah brings threats to Jehoiakim's life. I'm sorry, I misread that. His preaching brought threats to his life. He was physically beaten. He was imprisoned in a slimy pit just to basically sink into the mud and die like Joseph, remember? Out of his suffering, he pours out his feelings of anger. You know, we talked a little bit about Habakkuk protesting to God. Jeremiah does a lot of that too. He gives anger and protest and depression to God. And these are remarkably preserved. You know, we probably owe his book to Baruch, all right, who produced scrolls of Jeremiah's preaching, and of course the one that got burned too. And he rewrote it from scratch. Think about that.
Yeah, it's hard to
They had
imagine.
better memories than I do.
They made
And
different use of their memories.
23 years of it,
Yeah, they had different use of their memories back then than we do
Oh,
now.
yeah,
We don't have to.
yeah,
yeah.
They had
But
to
they had
remember
to.
all this stuff.
yeah.
You know.
Well, we used to do that too. We
Yeah,
used to
we did.
remember people's phone numbers and
Oh, yeah.
addresses and everything
Oh,
without
yeah.
even thinking
Carol,
about it.
what's your phone number?
678-773-2285.
What's mine?
I do not know.
There you go. But she knows how to call me.
I
I
can
do.
tell you what my phone number was when I was a little girl, MU16508.
867-530-9999?
No.
No, not that one?
No.
Okay.
Ours was
My grandmother's was
769-5805.
See, we can remember that
948-2799.
then.
See, I
but-
can
Here
remember
we go.
ours too.
No,
769-5805.
none of it, yeah, right. Well, maybe we could have written the scroll. You know. Go ahead, Ed, you wanted to say
That would've been
something?
very
I was just
different.
gonna say, it's like people today who who memorize the whole Bible,
Yeah,
could sit down and rewrite
yeah,
it. Just
they
like-
do.
Like Jeremiah, I mean, all the stuff that he had probably preached and taught and
Mm-hmm,
everything.
Well, people like with photographic memories,
yeah.
which, you know, there are people even today that have those type of memories. They
Well,
can,
look at Brian Durant.
Brian can remember
Oh, yeah.
dates and times and
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
months and, yeah.
James asked him
So,
last
yeah.
week, we were doing, it said, Brian, when did we, or Jim did, Jim said, Brian, when did we sing this? It was 6
Yeah.
years ago or something like that. He gave the date without
Yeah.
even
That's
clicking.
right. He did.
Yeah.
So
So
watch
that's-
out, because Brian's watching.
One of the first times Brian actually had a conversation with me, he says, I remember seeing you at Walmart on January 3rd, and they gave me the time, the date, the hour,
Yeah.
everything. I said, well, I'm glad you remember that, because I sure don't.
That's right.
It is
I don't
amazing.
remember seeing you, much less
Mm-hmm.
being able to
Amazing.
remember it.
That's
So,
true.
yeah, there are people.
Yeah.
There are.
Yeah, there are.
I'm not one.
And there were
I'm
back
not
then
either.
too.
Yes, there were. So, after the siege and destruction of Jerusalem in 588, 587, which Jeremiah gets an inside view from, he's actually treated very well by the Babylonians. He's given the choice. Come with me to Babylon. I'll set you up. You can stay here. Basically, you can go anywhere you want. He wanted to stay with the people. But then, you know, the people still not, I mean, even after all this, still don't trust him. Still don't want to do what he says. And basically, he dies in Egypt, and that's all we know. But thank goodness his words live on. And in the Dead Sea Scrolls, there's a lot of old scrolls of Jeremiah. But there were a couple of others. During he was preaching, you had Habakkuk and Zephaniah as well, who were preaching. Now, let's put a bow on this. The wider message of the prophets. Yahweh, the God of Israel, is in sovereign control of world history. I believe that's still true today.
Mhm.
It's confusing, hard to parse out, but he is. While having said that, I think we need to be careful giving God credit for some things that we think he's doing, and he very much may not be behind.
Yeah.
So I just think that's just being very, very careful.
Yeah, I do too.
God demands justice, top of 114. And politics matter to God. And all I will say about that is simply this, that the historical and prophetic books are full of politics, economic policies, military strategies, judicial processes, public speaking, infrastructure projects, taxation, diplomacy, international relationships, and so on. And all of this comes under God's gaze. I'm not talking about a separation of church and state or anything like that. God is very much interested in our politics, how the people govern themselves in this world. All right. Okay. Outward religion without ethical transformation is abominable to God. Amen. Abominable. Well, I go to church every Sunday. Yeah, but if we're living like rapscallions the rest of the week and not caring about people, it's an abomination. God has strong words for that, right? But let's go to page 115. Yeah, but it had to be shocking. I like what he says here at the bottom of 114. It had to be shocking when Amos and Isaiah tell the people that Yahweh hates and despises their worship and is fed up and sickened by the very sacrifices they think he wants. That must have been shocking. What? But it wasn't followed up with changed lives, with ethical transformation on our part. If it's not followed up with that, it's he doesn't want it. It stinks. Now, as we close out this chapter, we go back to the covenant, right? That is what the prophets are calling Israel back to. Remember. 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 There's a history, right? There's a history here. Go back and remember all that God has done. And there's a commitment. It's a mutual commitment. But here's what's wonderful about it. God will keep covenant even when we don't. Right? Well, there'll be consequences for not keeping covenant. But God will ultimately keep his covenant. I'm going to throw them out of the land, but I'm going to bring them back. You know? And then there are sanctions. There are promises and there are warnings. That's back in Deuteronomy. He sets the people up on two sides of a mountain, Moses does, and says, okay, this is the blessing side and this is the curse side. Now, he wasn't saying that those people were blessed and those were cursed, but as an example. All right, if you follow blessing and listen to the blessings, blah, 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 blah. However, over here, if you don't, the curses. And God says, I will bring judgment. And you'll be no different than the rest of the nations under God's judgment. That's tough. Someone asked me the other day, do I think what's going on in Israel right now has anything to do with that? No. Just something different. Something different. It's horrible. It's horrible. How you look at it. It's horrible. All right. With all of this in mind, okay, the prophets essentially remind Israel, again, they remind Israel of their history. God did so much for them in their past, but now they're behaving in a way. You can raise them well. You can love them, treat them well, and you do that with the chance that they'll just go from you. And Israel did. They just said, you know what? We want a king like the other nations. Solomon married into some families and brought other gods along. And it was just, oh, it's a cliff. Just as quickly as they had ascended, Israel.
Came back down.
They were gone within David and Solomon's lives. They were gone. So that's first one. They remind Israel of their commitments. Don't forget, right? And then they remind Israel of God's threats and promises. But the last paragraph gets the last word. But the prophets can see beyond that disaster. They know that judgment will not be God's final word. The destruction of Jerusalem will not be the end for the people of God. God's promise to Abraham still stands, and God will always be faithful to that promise. Since the salvation of the whole world depends on it, the prophets also bring a message of hope for the future, even in the face of disaster. They have good news to share. There is gospel in the Old Testament. But for that, you got to come back next week. All right? So, Donna, do you have anything that you would like to add here through In the Wonderful World of Zoomy?
No, but this is always really valuable to me. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah.
And hello to everybody. I wish I could be there in person.
Hey, Donna.
Hey,
You're
Donna.
here with us as best as you can be.
Mhm.
That's right.
That's great. We're glad you're here. All right. So next week, Lord willing, if we survive Saturday, and the board meeting on Sunday, yeah,
Well, and are we gonna baptize it by pouring or one or the other?
I don't know yet.
Oh, okay, that's still up in the air.
Donna's waiting on an answer
It's gonna be a big Sunday.
from the baptismal
I'll
candidates,
be
and
tired.
we'll do whatever the Lord deems that we will do, and we'll go forward. And the worst case scenario is they just they wait until we've got repairs made
Yeah.
on the baptistry, and then we'll fill that sucker up again, and hope it doesn't leak, and we'll go from there. So yeah, so that's what we're gonna do. But I'll let everybody know come Sunday, and for those of you that'll be streaming this, thank you so much for taking the time. I hope you're enjoying the book, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to shoot them my way. And thank you so much for being a part of this. I look forward to our next time of getting together. Everyone have a wonderful Thursday. Take care. Bye-bye.